In the 1950s, a researcher had data from 22 countries proving diet didn't cause heart disease the way he claimed. He published 7 of them, the 7 that agreed with him, and built the modern food pyramid on what was left. You've been eating his mistake for your entire life. 20 more just like it. Let's fix that. Skipping breakfast, you were told, is basically volunteering for a bad day, a sluggish metabolism, and a slow slide into poor decisions before 9 a.m. The phrase, "breakfast is the most important meal of the day," wasn't handed down by a nutritionist. It entered popular use through cereal advertising in the early 1900s, at the exact moment cereal companies needed people eating a bowl of something first thing every morning. Your metabolic rate doesn't spike or crash based on when your first meal happens. Some people function best eating early. Others do fine skipping it entirely and eating later. The science never mandated a schedule. The advertising did. 8 glasses of water a day, tracked like a compliance quota, chugged out of anxiety more than thirst. The number traces back to a 1940s recommendation that already included water from food, coffee, fruit, soup, everything you eat and drink across a day, not 8 separate glasses on top of it. Your thirst mechanism already tells you when you need fluid, calibrated by millions of years of evolution. And it's considerably more precise than a number some water bottle company printed on packaging decades later. You don't need a tracking app for something your body already monitors automatically. Eggs got treated as a cardiac risk for decades, rationed like they were dangerous, blamed for cholesterol nobody had actually measured yet. Dietary cholesterol and blood cholesterol are 2 different things, and for most people, what you eat has a far smaller effect on your blood levels than your liver's own production does. The panic started when early research noticed cholesterol in eggs and jumped straight to conclusions about arteries without testing whether the 2 were actually connected the way it assumed. Modern research has walked that back substantially. The eggs were never really the problem. The leap in logic was. Low fat became the entire personality of the food aisle for a solid 2 decades, printed on everything from yogurt to salad, dressing like a badge of virtue. When fat gets removed from a processed food, the texture and flavor disappear with it, and manufacturers had to replace that missing flavor with something. That something was almost always sugar. An entire generation ate low-fat products, felt responsible for it, and quietly consumed more sugar than the full-fat version would have contained in the first place. The label promised restraint. The ingredient list delivered the opposite. The juice cleanse gets sold as a reset button, a few days of expensive liquid discipline to flush out whatever your body supposedly couldn't handle on its own. Your liver and kidneys already filter your blood continuously, without a subscription, without a 3-day commitment, and without needing pressed vegetables to activate the process. No juice cleanse company has ever been able to name the specific toxin their product removes, because the organs already handling that job were never impaired to begin with. You didn't detox anything. You paid to make expensive urine for a weekend. MSG got blamed for headaches, chest tightness, and a vague cluster of symptoms that somehow only ever showed up after Chinese food specifically. The scare started with a single unverified letter to a medical journal in 1968, built on nothing but one person's anecdote. MSG is just concentrated glutamate, an amino acid your body produces naturally, and that exists in tomatoes, cheese, and Parmesan without controversy. Decades of controlled double-blind testing have failed to reproduce the reaction in a lab setting. One cuisine got singled out for a chemical that's sitting in your fridge right now under a different, more comfortable name. Organic produce gets a premium price tag built entirely on the implication that it's cleaner, safer, more nutritious than whatever's sitting next to it at a third of the cost. Organic farming still uses pesticides, just ones derived from natural sources instead of synthetic ones, and natural doesn't automatically mean gentler. Large comparative studies looking at nutrient content between organic and conventional produce have consistently found the differences are minimal, often statistically meaningless. You may be paying for a farming philosophy you believe in, which is a legitimate reason to buy organic. Nutritional superiority just isn't one of the reasons the evidence supports. Carbs got cast as the villain of an entire decade. blamed for weight gain with the kind of certainty usually reserved for something actually proven. Your brain runs primarily on glucose, and populations with some of the longest documented lifespans on the planet get the majority of their daily calories from carbohydrates, specifically the complex, fiber-rich kind. What actually correlates with weight gain is a caloric surplus and heavily refined carbohydrates stripped of the fiber that would have slowed digestion. Declaring an entire macronutrient category dangerous because refined flour exists is like blaming every liquid on Earth because one of them happens to be bleach. Skip a meal and someone will tell you your metabolism just slammed into starvation mode, hoarding fat, eating your own muscle, punishing you for the sin of not eating on schedule. Your metabolic rate doesn't meaningfully drop until fasting stretches past roughly 60 hours. Research comparing intermittent fasting to standard calorie restriction consistently shows no metabolic disadvantage from the timing itself. The starvation mode warning was useful for selling the idea that you needed to eat constantly, which conveniently required buying more food more often. Your body isn't panicking over a skipped lunch. Feed a kid sugar at a birthday party and watch the chaos unfold. And somehow it's always framed as the sugar's fault, never the presents, the friends, or the fact that it's a birthday party. A well-known study gave children either sugar or an artificial sweetener, then told the parents which one their kid actually received, except the researchers lied about it. When parents believed their child had eaten sugar, they reported hyperactive behavior regardless of what the kid actually consumed. The chaos was never chemical. It was expectation, projected onto a plate of cake. The 30-minute window after a workout gets treated like a closing gate, a strict deadline to drink a protein shake or lose the entire benefit of the session you just finished. Muscle protein synthesis stays elevated for hours after resistance training, not minutes. And total daily protein intake predicts muscle growth far more reliably than precise timing does. The 30-minute panic was extremely convenient for supplement companies, because a strict deadline is exactly what convinces someone to buy a portable, overpriced shake instead of just eating dinner 2 hours later like a normal person. Gluten-free took over grocery aisles as a lifestyle upgrade, marketed to people with no medical reason to avoid gluten at all, implying inflammation and fog and fatigue were all quietly caused by a protein in wheat. For the roughly 1% of people with celiac disease, avoiding gluten is medically necessary. For nearly everyone else, gluten-free replacement products typically contain more sugar, less fiber, and cost significantly more than the regular version sitting one shelf over. An entire industry convinced healthy people they had a problem that mostly existed in the marketing copy. Fresh vegetables get positioned as automatically superior to frozen, judged purely on the word fresh, printed somewhere on the packaging. Vegetables destined for freezing are typically picked at peak ripeness and frozen within hours, locking nutrients in place. Vegetables labeled fresh are often picked early to survive shipping, then sit in transit and on shelves for days, slowly losing vitamin content the entire time. Unless you're eating something straight out of a garden, frozen frequently wins the nutrition comparison it was never expected to win. Diet soda gets treated as the responsible swap, the version of the habit you're allowed to feel good about because the calorie count reads 0. Research on artificial sweeteners has found they can alter gut bacteria composition and blunt glucose tolerance in ways that don't show up on a nutrition label. Some large observational studies have even found diet soda drinkers gaining weight over time, likely because intensely sweet flavor with no calories can recalibrate what your brain expects from food. 0 calories was never the same thing as 0 consequence. Superfoods get stacked in the cart like nutritional insurance, goji berries, acai, spirulina, each one marketed as a small miracle capable of outweighing whatever else is happening in your diet. Superfood has no scientific definition and no regulatory standard behind it anywhere. It's a marketing category, not a nutritional one. A serving of common beans or frozen blueberries frequently matches or beats the antioxidant content of the exotic, expensive alternative sitting 3 aisles over. Sprinkling an expensive powder over an otherwise poor diet doesn't fix the diet. It just adds a more photogenic garnish on top of the same problem. The daily multivitamin gets treated like a safety net, One pill quietly covering whatever your actual meals failed to provide, guilt erased before breakfast. For healthy adults already eating a reasonably varied diet, large research reviews have repeatedly found no meaningful benefit from routine multivitamin use. Some fat-soluble vitamins don't flush out like the water-soluble ones do, meaning excess intake can actually accumulate in the body rather than simply disappearing. Taking a multivitamin to compensate for a poor diet doesn't fix the diet. It just adds a very small, very expensive placebo on top of it. Calorie counting gets presented as exact science, a precise number in, a precise number out, mathematically guaranteed to produce a specific result if you just track carefully enough. Food labels are legally permitted a margin of error of up to 20%, meaning the number you're counting so carefully may already be wrong before you've eaten a single bite. Your metabolism also isn't fixed. It adjusts dynamically in response to what you're eating and how active you are, actively shifting the equation while you're still trying to calculate it. The math is real. The inputs were never as exact as the app implied. Brown bread sits next to white bread, implying an automatic upgrade, the color alone doing the work that ingredients should be doing. Some brown bread is genuinely whole grain. A significant amount is simply white bread with caramel coloring or molasses added specifically to look healthier on a shelf next to the real thing. Unless the label specifically says 100% whole grain as the first ingredient, the nutritional difference between the two loaves may be closer to zero than the color suggests. You've been judging bread the way you'd judge a suntan, and a suntan tells you nothing about what's happening underneath it. Honey, agave, and coconut sugar get marketed as the gentle, natural alternative to regular sugar, priced like a wellness upgrade with minerals and enzymes implied, but rarely delivered at any meaningful dose. Your body processes glucose and fructose the same way regardless of which plant they originally came from. Agave in particular often contains a higher percentage of fructose than plain high fructose corn syrup, the exact ingredient most people buying agave are specifically trying to avoid. Sugar is sugar to your bloodstream. The origin story just changes the price tag attached to it. The comfortable assumption underneath everything on this list is that if a claim sounds official enough, repeated by enough people, printed on enough labels, it must have been checked by someone qualified along the way. Most of these myths trace back to a marketing department, an early study later contradicted, or a well-meaning guess that calcified into fact through sheer repetition. Nobody was checking. The label was the only credential most of these claims ever had, and a label is not a study. It's a sentence someone got paid to write. If you've been personally deceived by something that isn't on this list, drop it in the comments. I guarantee there's a marketing department behind it somewhere.